Hi guys, it's Chido here, redoing my entity blueprint tutorial just because last time it was a little bit complex and a little bit long, so I've just shortened it a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to use the Allied Rifleman as an example for this. And basically an entity blueprint is a blueprint for an entity, as the name suggests. An entity is any one object. So it can be a building, it can be an individual infantry unit. So the Rifleman blueprint will apply to as each individual rifleman within a rifleman squad. A squad has its own blueprint separate for that, and that'll be covered in another video. Vehicles all have their own entity blueprint, like I said, structures, pick up items like heavy machine guns and slaughter items and stuff like that all have their own entity blueprint for the item on the ground, and then that's linked to the slaughter item itself. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so these are all called extensions, as the extension at the end suggests. They're all pretty straightforward. Ability extension contains simply a list of all abilities that entity can use. If it's set to only that entity, the squad will only be able to use the ability if that entity is still alive. So if you had a squad of riflemen and another type of infantry unit, and only the riflemen could throw grenades, then if all the riflemen in the squad died, the squad wouldn't be able to use the throw grenade ability anymore. The action extension, what this does is it applies actions when the unit is created. So these all correspond to templates up here. There's lots and lots and lots of actions which are available. There's 3 separate categories, but there'll be a whole other video for that. Lots and lots of stuff to do. Right, attention extension, nothing to really worry about. This details how much damage the entity takes while they're burning. So if you don't want something to be flammable, make it true, in flame proof. How much damage is it taking per second? Is there a particular entity you want it to be or create while it's on fire? Any particular way you want it to die if it's on fire? So you might want to say if you want something flammable that explodes if it dies from fire. On flame death actions you'd put the explosion under there. Casualty extension, how long they roll around on the ground as a casualty for before they die. It's all pretty standard. Stains on the ground when they get wounded, how big they are, how long it takes for the splat on the ground to go away after they get rescued. Any modifiers or anything that might be applied while they're a casualty, what happens when they get back up, stuff like that. Combat extension contains all weapon info. In this case they're referred to as hardpoints. Each hardpoint can have several weapons. However, the standard case is only the first weapon slot will be used. I'm not entirely sure if it's possible to have multiple weapons on the same slot. I've done tests before, but they haven't been completely conclusive as to how the weapon swapping works. I think it's priority based in the weapons, but that's something I haven't had time to look into too much lately. Parent hardpoint, if you want a weapon to have the same target as another weapon, then you parent it to another hardpoint. So if hardpoint 2's parent was hardpoint 1, then whatever weapon you have in hardpoint 2 will target the same target as the weapon in hardpoint 1. That's pretty much that. Cost. How long does it take for the entity? If you have a squad of units, the squad build time is the total of the sum of all units within the squad. So for vehicles you want that to be higher. If you're making a unit which is in a squad by itself, you want the full build time. If you're making a squad of 6 guys and you want to take 36 seconds to build, you put it at 6. Cost, resource costs, upkeep, it just changes your income rate. Where are we? Yeah, cover extension. Just, are there any bonuses or anything that it gets in cover? Is the speed changed? So the speed is halved. Takes extra damage because it's negative. Same with negative cover. Light, heavy, etc. Gets a defensive bonus. On crush, weapons when it gets crushed. In this case, it applies modifiers. Okay. So when an infantry gets crushed, his speed gets reduced to 10%, and then he dies. Engineer extension, this is for building. Construction menus, a lot of them are... if you look in here, there's no actual list of what buildings are included. It's just a reference to the actual construction menu. In the buildings entity blueprint, it will have its own extension in which you specify which construction menus it's a part of. Is this the one thing it is? There you go. It takes twice as much damage while it's while they're building, rather. Construction rate multiplier, if you want multiple units to make it build faster. Normally set to 1 to stop, a squad of 6 guys building 6 times faster than they should. Okay, entity blueprint extension is for basically setting what model you want it to use. So if you look at the animator, it will refer to a active blueprint, which is under data, art, models, and then that starts. So we want racers, allies, soldiers, riflemen. Now, we have a rifleman folder which contains the model and the animation files. And then down here we have rifleman active blueprint, which is a collection. It refers to all the models which are being used in the rifleman active blueprint. So a rifleman needs to have the carbine model, needs to have an M1 rifle model, needs to have the 2 types of grenades available as well, needs to have its own rifleman mesh, and it also needs its own the infantry motion trees for its animations. That's about the only thing that's really is visible in game. Just determines whether the unit's visible or not. The mesh is visible or not. Collision meshes, don't bother with too much. They're a fairly complex thing, not something to touch if you're just starting. Health extension, can it be repaired, etc, etc. Cuttable is referring to tank traps being cut by engineers. Damage tables, basically at certain points you can determine how quickly something is repaired. So something that's got heavy damage, which is damage red, you might want it to repair faster than something which is damage green, or vice versa. Death actions, what happens when it dies, what actions are applied rather. Death event name is referring to an event in the RGO file. Not something to worry about to start off with. If you change that on a unit which you don't have a custom model on, it'll screw up the unit, so don't really touch it. Death seconds, how long it takes to die. Yeah, sort of. Does it get deleted when dead? Yes. Memory, hit points, how many hit points the unit has. Is it invincible? Is it a salvageable wreck? Is the wreck still owned by the player once it's a wreck? Very damage critical type. It's a def target because it's infantry, which means it doesn't have a rear Rear damage enabled. Does it take rear damage? Yes or no? This is a def target and it moves around a lot. No. For vehicles and stuff, this will be set different depending on what it is. When it gets rebuilt, does it turn into a particular entity or turn into a particular squad? Usually not. Useful only if you want a vehicle to be rebuilt as a weaker version of itself or something, or rebuilt as, you know, like turn a wrecked Sherman or whatever into a Sherman without a barrel or turret, whatever. When it gets rebuilt, does it use the wreck owner? No. If that's true, then basically, if that's true, and you and that is, where are we? There we go, and that's false. So when it dies, it becomes a wreck. It'll be owned by the world, or neutral, whatever you want to call it. If that's false and that's true, whenever it gets repaired, it will just become a neutral entity. It'll just sit there and do nothing, as fully repaired won't be usable. So if this is true, then you'll need to have that true. Weapon cover modifiers, do they get benefits from being in cover? Yes or no? Does their health regenerate? Is health regeneration disabled? Pathfinding is basically infantry. It's usually always true because you can always step over or drive over a dead infantry unit. For vehicles, depending on how big they are, they'll be false. There's a lot more. Actually, most of the time for vehicles they'll be false, because then it'll be determined by crush whether there'll be a problem or not. When they die, do they get revealed to everyone? When it becomes a wreck, what does it turn into? Hit object. Not something to worry about too much. What types of projectiles can pass through them? So in this case, artillery hitting an infantry unit will, you know, obviously go through them and hit the ground before it explodes. Sticky throw grenades, etc., things which rely on hitting the ground before going off, usually pass through objects. For vehicles and stuff, they'll be a sticky bomb on a vehicle will be false, because it will stick. You want it to stick to the vehicle. Line of sight, does it block shots, etc., or block line of sight? Modifiers are mostly they're temporary, but if you want a particular entity to be a duplicate of another, actually there's like heaps and heaps of modifiers. It's going to take a whole other video. Basically, you can manipulate any of those things through modifiers. Normally they're applied during upgrades and stuff like that, but on occasion they're applied through there just because it's easier to do that way. If you want a separate entity blueprint for something, but you want it to be a duplicate of something else. Moving, acceleration, speed, turn plan. I think there's only 3 or 4 different turn plans. There's like human, jeep, and tank or something. Basically, it just determines how it moves. So a human can, from one point, can go in any direction. A jeep has to go and turn and go around. A tank basically can turn on its point, but it's not instantaneous. It has to actually turn. Rotation rate. Pass type, not something to worry about. Yeah, most of that's pretty straightforward. Population extension. Only really personnel populations used, because it goes off the one population cap for everything. You can stuff around and like limit stuff according to vehicle and medic population, but it's generally not used. Posture, nothing to worry about. Okay. Sight extension just controls its what the unit sees. So sight radiuses, detect camouflage. I'll open that up as that's another table. So yeah, global camouflage, mine camouflage. Object set with a mine extension. Pretty sure it's the mine extension. I treat it differently to everything else. So that's the detect radius for a stealth sniper, whereas a landmine they won't see because they might not have a minesweeper thing, metal detector, whatever. That's pretty much it. Everything else is fairly straightforward. Yep. Don't worry about that. Team weapon user extension lets you use team weapons. Gets treated as infantry. Gets treated as infantry. It's also treated as a builder. UI extension. Lots of stuff in here. Where are we? For entity blueprints, the only like you see, help text is nothing because there's no help text associated with entities. It's only associated with the squads. So here you'll see screen name, which is just what's shown when the mouse is hovered over the entity. Squad select, when the entity is selected, the whole squad will be selected. Sloppy select, you can use a drag box to select one, it will select all of them. These are all left empty because it's an entity. Normally that's for squad stuff. Again, squad stuff. No, I'm pretty sure even vehicles use it for squads as well. Speech, that's not my area of expertise, but that relates to somewhere in here, I think, which is their speech files. Selection name soldier, when you double click on that, it'll select every unit with the same selection name. So if a unit's only used in one race, then you can share a selection name across races. So all basic infantry types might have a selection name of soldier, and then when double clicked, it will obviously only select your units. Yeah, colors, team color. Kill type is just the unit type that it is. The icon, again down here somewhere. I can't remember where it is. That's another tutorial. And that's pretty much it for UI. How much experience is given to another unit when that unit dies. That's related to actually I think that's mostly for command points. So how much experience towards a command point do you get when you kill it, and how many experience do you get towards a command point when it dies? It's not related to bloody Panzer Elite veterancy, I don't think. I think the same values apply, but I don't think too much to worry about. But yeah, that's a basic entity blueprint for an infantry unit. Structures have a completely separate thing. If we look at vehicles, look at Shem, it's not very different. Instead of an attention extension, it's got an attention generating extension. Instead of being crushy and being able to be crushed, it has a crush extension, which just says, okay, when I'm crushing heavy things, when I'm crushing light and medium things, do whatever. Can I crush people? Default crush mode, so you can actually apply, so its default crush mode is medium, so it'll act on these actions. But if you wanted to change it through something and upgrade it to a heavy crusher with an upgrade or something, then that's where it would those actions would be applied. Crew extension, not really something to worry about. That's just to have put gunners and stuff on your turrets and that. That's a whole other kettle of fish. Yeah, that's entity blueprints. I'll make another tutorial for structures and stuff like that. But thanks for watching.